Snow fell early that year, thick and silent, blanketing the countryside like a deliberate erasure. Eleanor Ashcombe stood alone in the eastern gallery of Hawthorne House, her reflection faint in the tall windows. Candlelight trembled behind her, catching in the ivory silk of her gown, unfinished but already heavy with expectation. Tomorrow she would be a wife. Tonight she belonged to no one, least of all herself. The house was unusually quiet. Servants moved softly, avoiding her gaze, as though she were already a ghost. Whispers had begun days earlier, unsettled glances, hurried silences, but no one had spoken plainly. They never did when a woman's fate was being negotiated without her consent. Eleanor pressed her palm to the cold glass and watched snow gather on the hedges below. She thought of her mother, long buried in the churchyard beyond the hill. Endure, her mother had always said. Dignity survives what pride cannot. A knock came not gentle, not kind. Her uncle entered without waiting for permission. Sir Malcolm Ashcombe did not look at her at first. He shut the door with care, as though sealing something away. His face, sharp and thin as a blade honed too often, was pale beneath the candlelight. "The engagement is dissolved," he said. The words struck like ice water. Eleanor turned slowly. Dissolved? Sir Malcolm finally met her eyes. There was no regret there, only calculation. "The Duke of Harrington has withdrawn his offer," he continued. "His family has received information." Eleanor felt the room tilt. What information? Sir Malcolm's lips tightened. "That your father's debts were greater than we disclosed. That your dowry—" "There was never a dowry," Eleanor said quietly. "No," he agreed, "and now there will be no marriage." She waited for the rest. It came with brutal efficiency. "You will leave tonight." The silence stretched, brittle and sharp. "Leave?" she echoed. "It would be improper for you to remain," Sir Malcolm said. "The household cannot accommodate scandal." Eleanor's hands curled into her skirts. "Where am I to go?" "That is no longer my concern." He placed a small purse on the table light enough to insult her and turned toward the door. Eleanor's voice stopped him. "Tomorrow was to be my wedding day." Sir Malcolm paused. "Then consider this mercy, better forgotten than whispered about." The door closed, and just like that, Eleanor Ashcombe ceased to exist. They did not give her time to pack properly. A maid, eyes downcast, hands trembling, helped her into a wool cloak, far too thin for the cold. Another pressed her gloves into her hands, as though passing contraband. No one spoke. No one dared. By the time Eleanor was led through the servants' entrance, the snow had begun to fall harder, the flakes thick enough to swallow sound. The gate closed behind her. No carriage waited. No escort stood guard. Hawthorne House loomed behind her, warm with candlelight, already resuming its careful indifference. The road ahead stretched white and empty, winding toward nowhere that would claim her. Eleanor took one step, then another. Her shoes soaked through within minutes. The cold bit sharply, climbing her legs, numbing her toes. Each breath burned. She did not cry. She would not give them that. The snow erased her footprints almost as soon as she made them. The horse appeared first, a dark shape cutting through the white, steady and unhurried. Eleanor barely had time to register it before dizziness overtook her. The world narrowed, tunneled, and she might have fallen had a gloved hand not seized her arm. "Easy." The voice was low, controlled. She looked up into a face cut from shadow and steel. The man dismounted with practiced ease, his coat dark, his posture unmistakably noble. His gaze moved over her quickly, taking in the thin cloak, the soaked shoes, the pallor of her skin. "This road is not safe for walking," he said. Her teeth chattered. "Nor is it safe for dying." Something flickered in his eyes. Not pity. Assessment. "Who are you?" he asked. "Eleanor," she managed. Of Hawthorne. His jaw tightened. Your wedding was tomorrow, he said. The realization struck her. You know me. I know of you, he corrected, and I know your uncle. Silence fell between them, heavy with implication. I am Julian Blackthorne, he said at last, Duke of Ravensmere. Her breath caught. Ravensmere. The name carried weight at Coldlands, ruthless justice, a man known for ending feuds, not rescuing women from snow-bound roads. He studied her for a moment longer, then made his decision. You will ride with me, he said. The horse was warm beneath her, the Duke's arm a rigid bar of support at her waist. Eleanor clung to the saddle, acutely aware of every breath, every shift of his body behind her. He did not touch her unnecessarily. That restraint was more unsettling than familiarity would have been. They rode in silence until lights appeared ahead. Ravensmere Hall, austere and commanding against the snow. Inside, warmth wrapped around her like a physical force. Eleanor swayed as she dismounted, and Julian caught her with unhesitating precision. Food. Fire. A physician. He ordered the servants. Now. She was led away, numb, disoriented, and furious with herself for the relief that flooded her veins. This was not salvation. This was something far more dangerous. Julian did not visit her chamber that night. He summoned her the following morning instead, fully dressed, fully armed with courtesy sharpened into a weapon. You will remain here until the weather clears, he said. After that, arrangements will be made. For what Eleanor asked? For your disappearance to become permanent. Her spine straightened. I do not wish to disappear. His gaze sharpened. Society does. Then society will have to endure me. Something like approval ghosted across his expression. Very well, he said. But understand this, my protection is not charity. It will cost you. She met his eyes without flinching. Everything already has. The invitation arrived 3 days later. A winter assembly. Attendance expected. Julian read it once, then handed it to Eleanor. Would you like to be seen? He asked. She folded the card carefully. I would like to be remembered. The smile he gave her was thin, dangerous. Then we will go together. Ravensmere Hall had not prepared for a guest in years. It showed in the way servants hesitated when Eleanor passed, in the cautious politeness that hovered between respect and fear. She noticed everything now. Survival sharpened the senses. A seamstress was summoned from the village. Fabric was laid across Eleanor's bed, deep midnight blue, unadorned save for subtle silver thread at the cuffs. Not white, Julian said when she glanced at him. White invites judgment. And blue, she asked. Blue suggests composure, he replied. And secrets. She almost smiled. Before he left, he paused at the door. Once you step into that ballroom, he said, you will not be pitied. You will be measured, attacked, tested. Eleanor lifted her chin. I was tested in the snow. Julian inclined his head. Then you may survive society. Carriages lined the drive like a display of wealth and vigilance. When Julian offered his arm, Eleanor felt the murmur ripple before they even crossed the threshold. Whispers followed them like a living thing. She was dismissed. No, abandoned. Isn't that Ravensmere? The doors opened. Music faltered only for a heartbeat, but Eleanor felt it like a blade. Eyes turned. Judgment sharpened. Julian guided her forward without hesitation. His hand remained steady at her waist, a silent declaration. They were announced. Eleanor Ashcombe did not lower her gaze. Sir Malcolm Ashcombe paled when he saw her. You should not be here, he hissed when he cornered her near the refreshment table. Neither should I have been cast out, Eleanor replied softly. Julian appeared beside her like a shadow given form. "Is there a difficulty?" the Duke asked. Sir Malcolm bowed too deeply. "None at all." Eleanor watched something fracture behind her uncle's eyes, control slipping, replaced by fear. Julian requested the floor. The orchestra resumed. Eleanor's pulse thundered as his hand closed over hers. They moved together with lethal precision, every step of a conversation. "You are enjoying this," she murmured. "Enjoyment is inefficient," he replied, "but usefulness has its pleasures." Her laugh surprised them both. By the second dance, the rumors had teeth. A lady's voice carried too clearly. "Ravensmere collects causes now." Julian leaned close. "Remain calm. Fury gives them victory." Eleanor straightened. "Then I will be victorious." They retreated to the gallery overlooking the ballroom. "Why are you doing this?" Eleanor asked. Julian's gaze did not soften. "Because someone decided your life was expendable. And you disagree." "I dislike inefficiency," he said. "And injustice breeds instability." She studied him. "You're not as cold as you pretend." His voice dropped. "Do not mistake strategy for sentiment." The next morning, invitations were rescinded, doors closed, but others opened. A letter arrived unsigned, dangerous, intrigued. "If Ravensmere shelters you, perhaps you are worth knowing." Eleanor folded it carefully. She was no longer invisible. She was a problem. 3 letters arrived within the week. Each bore a different seal. Each promised something different: curiosity, alliance, warning. Eleanor read them by the window of her chamber as snow melted into gray slush along the eaves. Society had found its voice again, and it spoke in riddles. The first was polite to the point of menace, an invitation to tea extended by a countess whose loyalty was rumored to be purchased rather than earned. The second was unsigned but intimate, as though the writer knew exactly where Eleanor slept and when she woke. The third was brief. "Ravensmere does not give without reason. Be careful which debt you accept." Eleanor folded the last letter with care. "They're afraid," she said. Julian stood near the hearth, removing his gloves one finger at a time. "They're curious," he corrected. "Fear comes later." "And which do you prefer?" He glanced at her. "Fear is honest." News traveled faster than snow melt. By the end of the week, Julian's steward reported visitors turned away at the gate, men who claimed old acquaintances and old grievances. One name surfaced again and again: Lord Harrington, the same house that had rejected Eleanor's marriage. Julian's expression did not change when he heard it, but the air around him sharpened. "Harrington believes influence entitles him to correction," Julian said. "He will test me." Eleanor's voice was steady. "And me. You are the test." Julian did not coddle her. He taught her instead. Over maps and correspondence, he explained alliances, who smiled and who bled behind closed doors. He showed her how invitations were weapons, how silence could bankrupt a reputation faster than scandal. "You must never beg," he said. "You must invite." Eleanor listened, learned, adapted. At night, she lay awake replaying every lesson. Every glance held a moment too long. This was not affection. This was preparation. Lord Harrington arrived without an invitation. His carriage bore the confidence of a man accustomed to compliance. He was ushered into the great hall, where Julian waited alone. "You shelter inconvenient women now?" Harrington asked lightly. Julian's smile was thin. "I shelter what others discard." Harrington's gaze flicked toward the staircase. "Careful. Some burdens bite." Julian stepped closer. "So do consequences." The visit ended abruptly. The war had begun. Eleanor received her first guest alone. Lady Weatherby arrived veiled in civility, bearing condolences disguised as curiosity. "You must be very brave," the lady said. Eleanor poured the tea herself. "Bravery implies choice. I prefer competence. By the time Lady Weatherby departed, she carried more uncertainty than she had brought. Julian observed from a distance, something unreadable in his eyes. "You learn quickly," he said. "I had an excellent teacher." The storm came that night. Wind battered the hall, rattling windows like bones. Eleanor found Julian in the library, sleeves rolled, papers spread across the desk. "You didn't dine," she said. "Neither did you." Silence pressed close. "You could send me away," she said quietly. "End this." Julian's voice was low. "And return you to men who would erase you?" Their eyes held. For a moment, only a moment, the distance between strategy and desire narrowed to something dangerous. Julian stepped back. "That line," he said, "must remain uncrossed." Eleanor nodded, though her pulse betrayed her. The retaliation came swiftly. A contract dissolved, a shipment delayed. Ravensmere's interests suffered small, deliberate wounds. Julian read the reports without comment. "This is because of me," Eleanor said. "Yes," he replied, "and because they believe I will yield." "Will you?" He met her gaze. "Never." Eleanor stood at the window once more, but the view had changed. She was no longer watching the world from exile. She was watching it calculate her worth. Behind her, Ravensmere Hall breathed with quiet menace. Eleanor Ashcombe had been cast out once. She would not be discarded again. The rumor did not arrive loudly. It crept. By the time Eleanor heard it, the lie had already been dressed in civility and passed from drawing room to drawing room like a delicate poison. She was not merely a discarded bride. She was an opportunist, a woman who had engineered her own abandonment, who had ensnared the Duke of Ravensmere with calculated vulnerability, a woman who had traded purity for protection. Eleanor heard it first from a maid whose loyalty wavered between affection and fear. "They say you planned it," the girl whispered, "that you sought him out." Eleanor dismissed her gently, then sat very still. So this was the shape of retaliation. Invitations stopped arriving. Doors once cautiously open were now firmly closed. A lady who had smiled warmly days earlier turned her back in the street. Julian noticed immediately. "They mean to isolate you," he said, "and provoke me." Eleanor lifted her chin. "Then let us disappoint them." The summons came sealed and official. Eleanor was required, to appear before the Ladies' Committee of Moral Conduct. Julian read the letter twice. "This is Harrington," he said. Eleanor took the paper from him. "Then I will answer." His voice sharpened. "They will not be fair." "I do not require fairness," she replied. "Only the opportunity to speak." The room was warm, richly furnished, and merciless. 5 women sat in judgment, each powerful, each smiling with polished concern. "You were dismissed from your family home," the chairwoman said gently. "I was expelled," Eleanor corrected. "You accepted the protection of an unmarried man." "I accepted survival." Murmurs followed. And in return, another asked. Eleanor met her gaze without flinching. "I offered nothing that was not freely given." Silence fell. The doors opened. Julian entered without an invitation. Gasps fluttered around the room. "This proceeding is concluded," he said calmly. "Any further harassment of Miss Ashcombe will be regarded as a direct insult to my house." The chairwoman stiffened. "You overstep." "I am Ravensmere," Julian replied. "I do not overstep. I end things." The consequences were immediate. A lucrative alliance dissolved. Julian's political rivals rejoiced. That night, Eleanor stood before him, guilt heavy in her chest. "I will leave," she said, "before I ruin you." Julian's voice was quiet. "You underestimate the damage already done by others." "And me." "You," he said, "are the excuse." Julian poured 2 glasses of brandy. "They will not stop," he said, "unless they fear you." Eleanor accepted the glass. "Then teach me how to be feared." His gaze held hers longer this time. "That path," he said, "will change you. I have already changed." Eleanor wrote 3 letters of her own. Each was courteous, each was devastating. Within days, a benefactor withdrew support from Harrington's allies. A marriage negotiation quietly collapsed. Julian read the reports once, then looked at her. "You did this," he said. "Yes." A slow smile curved his mouth, equal parts pride and warning. Eleanor returned to the window where she had once watched snow erase her path. This time, she saw something else. Roots. Openings. Behind her, Julian's presence was steady, undeniable. They were no longer protectors and protected. They were allies. And society had just declared war.